Yeah, we were built to do hard things. You can do hard things. And the thing you're doing right now is probably not as hard as you're making it out to be in your head. And if you don't try, you're definitely never going to get there. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. There's all those things that you hear people say it all the time, but it's true that we are our own worst enemies. We stand in the way far more than anybody else will. And it's that little nagging person or entity or spirit or whatever you want to call it that sits on your shoulder and tells you that you can't do something. And it is absolute BS. And you have to just acknowledge that it's there. Be like, yeah, okay, I hear that. I'm not going to make just ridiculously dumb decisions. And I'm going to do it anyway. And it's a learned skill. It's not easy. It's certainly depending on your personality type and your behavioral style. It doesn't come easily to a lot of people. And some of the highest achievers I know are the people who get imposter syndrome the most. And I deal with a lot of incredible, they're making 6-7 figures and they still have that feeling. So if some of the highest achieving people in the world are feeling the same way you are, then there's nothing stopping you either.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I have a great guest on with me today. Amanda is here. We're going to be talking about all the great stuff happening in her podcast, but also in her author journey. And she's got so many things to talk to us about, Amanda. Welcome to Living the Next Chapter. Nice to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
It's great. And I love your background. I told you that the first time we met, and it looks like the meeting's about to start behind you. And there's nobody there yet, so it's great.
No,
it's nice. I love those backgrounds. Great. Good times, good things happening. Can you let people know, first of all, I like to always ask this, where you are in this great big world of ours?
Right now, I am located in Houston, Texas.
There you go. It's the biggest place on earth with the biggest sky, right? Is that
yes,
right? Yes.
It feels like the biggest place. I was like, I can't believe there's 6 million people who live in this town. It blows me away. Big sky country. And a good place to be.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah, I know, right? Unbelievable. I guess I noticed it though when I'm in traffic. So all those Estonians out there, you know what I'm talking about.
And everyone just went, yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit off the bat about your author career. When did you decide one day that being an author would be your calling in life or part of your calling? Can you take us back to that moment? When did you just feel like, you know what, I'm going to be an author?
Well, my very first decision to be an author was actually before I was able to write. When I was a very small child, I told my parents, they always ask, what are you going to be when you grow up? And I told everybody I was going to be a writer from the time I was, 4, 5, 6 years old. That's what I told everybody I was going to be. Like other people were being princesses and firefighters, and I wanted to be a writer. I didn't even think I knew what a writer was or what that meant. But I told myself I was going to be a writer, and it's always been in the back of my mind, I'm going to be a writer. I'm going to be a writer. And, sad story. In high school, I had this one teacher who took the time out of his day to pull me aside and told me I was never going to be a writer. He was like, you're never going to succeed in this. You should just give up this dream now. You're never going to be a writer. And it crushed my little teenage soul. And even though I didn't particularly like this teacher, when you hear somebody he was an English teacher, and you hear somebody in the industry as you know it tell you can't make it at such a young age, it did two things. It made me feel like crap. Number one, yeah. I just went in this little am I really that bad of a writer? Was my essay on, I don't know, whatever story I was writing that bad that he had to take time out of his day to tell me I was horrible? And was I going to listen to him? Well, obviously, many years later, I clearly did not listen to him. I actually got a degree in creative writing in English from my university, among a few others. And I sort of put it on the shelf, and I didn't do it. And I've been talking literally for 40 years about how I was going to be a writer and hadn't done it. And a year and a half ago, I was a very good friend of mine, a business partner. She and I were both talking, we need to write a book. And it was almost before Christmas, and we just we're talking to each other over a Zoom call. She lives in Thailand. I lived at the time in Hawaii. And we just started to say, you know what? We need to stop saying we're going to be writers. We need to stop saying we're going to write a book. and then just do it. And so we made a decision. And after that, we met every week and we busted out our book in a month, maybe. And that was our first book, The Pursuit of Badasserie, How to Create Badass Business Abundance. And that came out last July. And now we are in the week launch of our second book that's coming out in just a few days. I don't know when you're listening to this podcast, but for me, it's a few days. And, we're already starting to write book 3. So it's been a long time coming, but long story, even longer. Now I'm a published author. Hooray!
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's the one thing that I guess we have new authors that are listening to the podcast, and they're at the same kind of spot in life where they're just kind of putting this book in front of them and they kind of walk up to the book and they move it forward again. They've never actually got to the point of actually writing. And I think, like you said, you just kind of said, okay, we're just going to give ourselves a day to give ourselves a goal. And we're just going to, now we're accountable to something. I just posted on our Instagram like yesterday for Living the Next Chapter, a quote from Lorne Michaels from SNL. And his quote is, and I'll read it to you because I have it on my screen here with me. I say it every week. We don't go on because we're ready. We go on because it's 11:30.
Absolutely.
For Saturday Night Live, right? So it's a live show and it's 11:30. We go on. It's not about being ready. It's about 11:30 on Saturday night. And I'm like, that's it, right?
Yeah.
You just put that goal in front of you now. And now it's no longer just some ethereal idea of someday I'll be an author, but
because you're never going to be ready. It's never the right time. It's never convenient. You're never going to be ready. And if you wait till you're ready, you're going to be waiting your whole entire life because there just isn't a perfect time. Perfect doesn't exist. And I hear a lot of people when they're trying to write their books, because we do teach people how to write books now and get them published. And it's so much of that dialogue in your head is, well, I just don't have time. Like, I just maybe this summer, maybe next year, maybe after the holidays, maybe after, pick some arbitrary next Tuesday, like whatever time it is that they think that they need. But the truth of the matter is, my co-author and I wrote these books while we ran other businesses. I'm a sole parent. We live in opposite sides of the world, writing this book. So if you make time, you make it a priority, and it is something that you want to do, now is the time. There's no better time than now. And if you wait for the perfect time, if you wait for it to be convenient, it's literally never going to happen. And so that really is what separates people from the people who want to write books and the people who do write books. Is that small, like minuscule percentile who actually get their book finished. You've got to commit to it and you've got to want it. And I really wanted it. So it was a perfect time for me to finally tell myself I wanted it badly enough to do something about it.
Okay. So to your amazing co-author in Thailand, who hopefully is listening to this episode and all the great things we're saying about them, anything you want to say to them as they're listening to the podcast from your perspective as a co-author working together and this friendship you built? And I know it's a unique opportunity, I think, for them to speak to them. I'm going to get out of the way. But what would you like to say to them as they're listening to our conversation?
She is amazing. I would say 100% I could not have done this without her. Not that we couldn't both individually have written books. I think that isn't the issue. I think both of us could have talked forever on these subject matters. However, the thing that made it so wonderful to work with her is that we did hold each other accountable. And when you're in that writing process, I just didn't want, when the weeks came up that I didn't feel like doing it, when my kid was sick, the holidays came up, 1,000 other things were coming up. I knew I had a meeting with her and I didn't want to be the weakest link in the team. So, and she felt the same way about it. She's like, I can't miss this meeting. I can't blow this off. This is an appointment and a meeting with another person who is relying on me to bring my half to the table. So, I didn't think I was going to be a co-author, but it was such a great way to start because she and I have differing strengths and it made the process so much easier. If I couldn't do something, she could it and vice versa. And it just made the whole thing come together so much faster because we were able to motivate, hold each other accountable, and be that sounding board and support group, even on the days that we didn't feel like writing and we didn't feel like what we said mattered. Because I think no matter how important the subject matter and how passionate you are about it, there's always going to be a day where you're like, does my story matter? Like, does anybody care? Like, I'm just one in a billion people. Does anybody give, one hoot about what I'm going to say. And yeah, the answer is yes. Somebody cares and somebody can be helped and somebody can find entertainment. And we're just our own worst enemies in that. And it's just, she was just instrumental in getting me out of my own head, getting me out of my own way. And, ultimately we pushed each other to get this book written as fast as we did. And the second book, particularly, like we made these goals and it was not a fear. I feel like I'm afraid of her. It's just, and nor she of me, but it's that fear of being the weakest link. I didn't want to be the one who let the team down. And it's, she's just a wealth of information and knowledge. I've known her for almost 10 years now. And she's been a mentor for me in the business. And it's been wonderful working with her. And I tend to steamroll a lot of my business partners because of just the personality that I have. So it's been really great to work with somebody and just feel 100% trust and reciprocation in our work process. So it's been fantastic.
Okay. Talk a little bit about your podcast, because people are listening to us on a podcast. We'll have links to your show here on the podcast as well. So, if you don't have enough Amanda in this episode, there's a whole bunch more that you can have by clicking the link, right?
You can literally listen to my voice all day long.
There you go. So tell us about the podcast, when it started, how many episodes, a little bit about the show.
Yeah. So after we wrote the book, The Pursuit of Badasserie, my co-author Lynn and I decided that we just weren't done with that topic. We weren't done talking about business owners and the business process and the entrepreneurial process. So we started a podcast to talk more about it because we couldn't fit everything we wanted to say in, over 40 years of entrepreneurial experience between the two of us. We couldn't fit it all into just one book. That's why we wrote a second book and now the third one. And so our podcast is all about helping business owners grow personally in their lives and their businesses and really build that business that they want and a life that they want, because there's a lot of that hustle culture that is right now. But she and I both believe in the hustle culture in its purest, happy form, not in this grind of I'm never going to get ahead, but in the passion and the drive that hustle creates. You want to hustle because you love it. And so she and I both believe in that. And so our podcast came out shortly after the book. The book came out July 9th of last year. And then the podcast came out August 15th. So just about a month later, we released our first 5 episodes. And now we are in a sales series of our episodes in honor of our second book, which is on sales. And it's coming out every week. I think we're on episode 21, came out today. And we've recorded through and we're inviting guests. And it's been really fun to talk to these international experts, people from all over the world in different types of businesses, from railroads in China to, traditional sales in England and course sales in Canada. So it's been really, really eye-opening, and just the breadth of knowledge and experience that we can impart to fellow small business owners and entrepreneurs who are on their way up or don't know where to go. And it's just sort of an all-around business podcast to help grow and share what we've done well and what we've failed epically at. So there's definitely a huge range of our successes and failures, and we share those on the podcast.
Good. Where would a new listener start with your podcast? Episode 1? Should they start with the most recent one? Where should they go?
Well, obviously, it's always nice to start from the beginning. We give a little bio with us, but you can start anywhere. They're all self-contained. So there's, we like to keep them all short. They're under 30 minutes because, it's commute time, just to get to work, get it done, get those actionable items, and then get on with your day. So you could binge listen to it. Please do. I would love that. But you can listen, tune in wherever you listen. We're on Spotify and Apple and all the places. And it's only going to go up from here. We're doing one a week, and just there's no stopping us. No stopping us now.
Okay, for an author listening who's like, wait, are you telling me, Amanda, that I should have a podcast to go along with my book? How would you answer that question? Do you think that's a good idea?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So
good.
Our desire to have a podcast was more than just, I need to have a podcast because I have a book now. And I think a lot of people feel like they have to have one from a marketing standpoint, I have to. But if you coming at a podcast from the standpoint of I have to do one, don't.
Right.
It's not going to go. It's a lot more work than you think. I mean, we're here on a podcast talking, and it's great. I get to talk with people all around the world, and that's amazing. but that's not like I talk with you and then like that the work's done, because the post-production is what really is work. So this might be an hour long, and 2 hours of talking with somebody that you then spend 7 hours producing.
Right.
And then you're trying to fund it, and then it's your time. So there's a lot more involved than just, I'm going to make a podcast. So if your motivation for it is, I have to do it for marketing, or like maybe I see someone doing it's going to make me some money, like that's not a good reason. It's actually why I dropped out of med school, because I was going to do it for the money, and that's not a good reason to do anything. It has to be a passion project. So for us, we just really wanted to share with more people, and my partner's in Thailand. She works international with a lot of international clients. I'm in Houston, and my clients are all over, some over the world, but mostly in the United States, across, a couple oceans there. But we still can only reach so many people individually. So we thought a podcast and a book would really be a way to teach globally efficiently. We're very efficient people. So we just want to reach the maximum amount of people and provide that guidance for free and reach and help as many people as possible. It's all about serving others. And, we all go up together. We just want to leave this world a better place. And if we can do that in a book and a podcast, then time well spent.
Nice. Okay. So tell me about the audience for the books. Who did you have in mind when you sat down to write these, and who would benefit the most from clicking add to cart on your books? Who is that reader that you're looking to get?
Well, number one, small business owners, entrepreneurs, anyone who's aspiring to be in that space, freelancers. The first book we wrote, The Pursuit of Badasserie, How to Create Badass Business Abundance, is really about mindset, productivity, creating that business and working smarter. So it's a strategy book. It's a book on your abundance mindset, on getting out of your way. And so we wrote it for all the business owners, all the entrepreneurs out there who are realizing that it's a lonely road. It's a lonely road to be an entrepreneur, to be a solopreneur. And if we can help somebody feel a little less lonely, feel like they have some strategy and guidance, that's what we wrote it for. They're actually you don't have to read it cover to cover. And we did it that way on purpose because for me anyway, I don't really have time all the time. I don't have the bandwidth to sit down and like read leisurely all the time. I mean, I do sometimes. I love to read, but it's not like I get to do that and like sit down and read all night like I used to when I was younger. So this book is really separated up into chapters. So you go to a chapter like, okay, I really need help on, imposter syndrome, or I really need help on, this, that, and the other. And you can go to that chapter, read it, and then apply the action items at the end. There's little action worksheets in the book that you can apply that to what you're working on. So it's very hands-on and very actionable. And that's really what we wanted, is to give you steps that you could follow realistically, even when you're, busy with your life and all your responsibilities and all the roles you play. So that's the number one person: entrepreneurs, aspiring new business owners, longtime entrepreneurs. Those are our people. Those are our peeps. And then the second book, I would add on to that anybody who's in a sales profession. So because that book is focused on sales, well, honestly, if you're in a business of any kind, like you're in sales, like even if you think that you're not in sales, you are selling yourself. If you're online dating, you're in sales. So it's for anybody in sales, but specifically sales managers, anybody who's in that specific sales market, as well as business owners for sure, and entrepreneurial salespeople as well.
Where do you see your community struggling the most when they're putting out their offers into the world and selling? One thing comes to mind for me is how to value what I have to offer. If it's a service or something, I just don't know how to value who I am. That's kind of the one things I would be struggling with and I would have a question about. But what are you seeing out there where people are struggling with as far as sales?
The number one thing I see, which does speak a little bit to yours, is fear. Okay. Fear that they're going to offend people, fear that they're not offering the right thing, fear that they're not offering enough value, fear that that they're undercharging, that they're overcharging. There's just a lot of fear in sales. There's a lot of uncertainty. And our book really addresses that there's a whole section of the book just on fear. And what comes up from that, because that fear's like the base emotion. There are a lot of things that you feel when you're selling, and there's this proverbial used car salesman like twiddling his evil mustache. Like that's a vision we get when we're thinking of these diabolical sales figures, but it just isn't that way anymore. And I think particularly the women that I work with, they're afraid of coming off as pushy, and they don't want to have this masculine form of like, I'm going to get the sale no matter what. I don't care about the person. It's just a number. And we're really dispelling that idea that, I mean, we want you to make money. These are businesses. Like obviously the book is about making money. However, it's also about making relationships and understanding the value of the person that you're working with and what they're looking for, and how you can create that value and create the sale that really revolves around serving them as the customer versus serving yourself and like padding your own wallet. So if you sell authentically and you're selling and providing a service to the person in a way that they need it, so providing them that value, and getting the sale is the easiest thing in the world, because you're giving them what they want. That's what they want. And it comes from a standpoint of serving. And that just feels good for both sides. And then the money will come. So even if you, and my co-author and I have a large sales background between the two of us, who've done all sorts of sales. And it just feels better when you're doing it in a way that feels authentic to you, that doesn't feel pushy. And it's much easier to get the sale. It's much less stressful. And it's more about building relationships that last and can feed into your sales process for years to come than just these like churn and burn transactional. And sometimes you need transactional things. I mean, I'm not saying that transactions are not useful. However, in the long game, it's creating relationships and really filling a need, finding what your customer really needs and filling that need. And that's where the value comes in, because you're listening actively to what they want and then giving it to them. And then they're all smiles, they're happy, they feel valued, they feel listened to, they feel heard and understood. And you're actually providing a service for them that fits them. And that's rewarding on both sides.
We always seem to have this little person on our shoulder that sort of pops up and says, or a teacher who pulls you aside in class and says, who do you think you are to be a writer? Anyways, another topic. But we have this little thing that pops up and says, who are you to offer that or charge that or ask for that? Who are you? And what's happening for me personally is I have, in the last year, I've got 450 episodes of podcasts over a year, over 7 shows. I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of people. And now people are coming to me saying, Dave, I need your help to start a podcast. How much do you charge? And I'm like, I don't know how much, because I've never done this for anybody. And then immediately I start going, oh, but I'm not as good as A, B, or C, and they charge this. And again, it's right there. Who are you to say this costs this much money? That's absurd, right? And I'm like, it literally happened to me today that I'm trying to write up this proposal for somebody. I'm getting like nauseous because I just don't feel like, I have that imposter syndrome. I have this thing going on saying, you're going to make a fool of yourself. It's not going to work, right? And sales isn't your thing. So for somebody like me, who's doing this today, who has that in the back of their mind, what kind of words of wisdom do you have for somebody like me when you hear that word saying, you're not good at this? How do I overcome that?
Well, the first thing I would say, I mean, you're saying that who am I to charge that, or who am I to know how to do that? But who are you to say that you're not the right fit for that person? Why is it that you're already telling yourself you're not good enough when you haven't even offered it out? Let them make the decision whether or not it's right for them before, I mean, you're trying to make the decision for them. Right. So your worth isn't how many years you studied. It isn't how many episodes you have. It isn't your metrics. It's a lot of things all combined together. And I think, we get so what our vanity metrics are. And I know that vanity metrics are a thing and they're important and they are absolutely useful. However, they don't define who you are and what you bring to the table. Right. And, who are you to tell this prospective person that you're not the right choice? Let them make the decision.
Right.
give them all the information that you have, that you feel comfortable with, that you feel makes you who you are and makes you what your unique selling points are, what makes you work for you, and then let them make the decision on whether or not that works for them. So you're already, before you've even given them a proposal, you're already telling them subconsciously that you're not the right choice, but let them make the decision rather than just telling them, oh, you might want to go with this person, or I don't have enough years, or they wouldn't be coming to you if they didn't think you already were pre-qualified. They've already given you a pre-qualification. All you have to do is talk about what you do. And if it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit. But if it is, it is. Awesome. Don't make the decision for them.
It's good advice. And I think that applies to authors as well. As you're sitting there looking at a blank page in front of you, and again, that little thing pops up and says, well, you to write this book. There's other people who wrote about this. Why you, right? Your teacher who pulled you aside and says, you can't do this. You're not good at this. Right? I'm going to show you that I can. And I think there's a big climb for all of us, no matter what we're trying to do in life. There's that history of all those things people have said or alluded to that there's not reality. You can do the things that are in front of you.
Yeah. We were built to do hard things. You can do hard things. And the thing you're doing right now is probably not as hard as you're making it out to be in your head.
Yeah.
And if you don't try, you're definitely never going to get there. Right. Ask, the answer is always no. There's all those things that you hear people say it all the time, but it's true that we are our own worst enemies. We stand in the way far more than anybody else will. And it's that little nagging person or entity or spirit or whatever you want to call it that sits on your shoulder and tells you that you can't do something. And it is absolutely yes. And you have to just acknowledge that it's there. Be like, yeah, okay, I hear that. I'm not going to make just ridiculously dumb decisions, and I'm going to do it anyway. And it's a learned skill. It's not easy. It's certainly depending on your personality type and your behavioral style. It doesn't come easily to a lot of people. And some of the highest achievers I know are the people who get imposter syndrome the most. And I deal with a lot of incredible, they're making 6-7 figures and they still have that feeling. So if some of the highest achieving people in the world are feeling the same way you are, then there's nothing stopping you either. Right.
Great point. I love that. Okay. What's coming up next for you guys? Are you continuing to write together? What's the next thing?
So our next thing, we have our third book is, we've done what we call a data dump. So just all the ideas are on paper. Now we just have to actually write it. But of course, we're going to wait till the second book comes out before we just start diving into a third one. Let's take a little break, take a nap, then go back into it. So our third book is in the process. We also have a sales mastermind that's coming up where we're just going to be giving free sales mastermind for, we have 5 experts from around the world who are going to come on and just tell you the tips and tricks that we use in our industry. And really excited about that. And then we have a writing mastermind that comes up. We do it several times a year, and it's a 12-week live mastermind that my co-author and I host. And it teaches you how to write a book, how to get it published, what to look for if you're going from self-publishing to a traditional big box company, big names, the Simon & Schuster and so forth. So it gives you options and where you want to go. And it's so much fun because you get these writing masterminds where one person's writing a romance and one person's writing about homeschool and one person's writing about hypnotherapy. And it's so much fun to see how their stories develop, how they grow, and how they become more confident in the process. And the goal of it at the end of the 12 weeks is to have your book written and ready to publish. And sometimes it turns out that way and yay, I have a book. And sometimes you need a little more time because everybody's different, but at least sets you up with those tools and those patterns and those systems that we have used to get our books published and written and published. And so I really, really love that. And like I said, we do that a couple times a year, and it's so rewarding to see people go from, I don't know, I want to write a book, but insert reason here, to having a book. It's very, very rewarding. And it makes me, and it gives you that sense of, and I was talking about it earlier in the podcast about the accountability that I have with my co-writer.
Yeah.
it gives you that without having to have a co-author. So it's so nice to feel like you go to these weekly meetings, you get skills and you get tips and you vent and you have people to read your work and bounce ideas off of and like go over cover art and so forth. And you feel accountable to them. Like you're all making the commitment to be there and you all feel accountable to each other. So it just is an excellent dynamic, and people are getting their books written, and that's what it's all about.
Nice. Awesome. So where do we go, Amanda? How do we find out more information? How do we talk to you? Where do we sign up? Let's do that as well.
Well, for sure, the book, you can go to our website, thepursuitofbadasserie.com, and that's Badasserie with an IE. So actually, they go with the Y, it still points me there. And that's where you'll find everything about the book, the masterminds. We have courses that we offer, both free and paid. We have all the things on that website, and also leads you to our podcast. And then personally, I'm a business coach, a consultant, and strategist. And I've got my business is AF Consulting Team. So you can see afconsultingteam.com, and you can work with me. I'm always taking new clients and trying to spread the business love around the world and to help other aspiring and existing entrepreneurs and small business owners grow and develop themselves, their lives and their businesses.
I mean, I have to tell you, your teacher back in school was wrong. You have the gift, you have the talent, and I thank you for sharing and inspiring the next round of authors to do the same. So, I'm so happy to have met you and connected with you. I have a new podcast to fall in love with as well, which I love, and I love the name of it. It's so good. You just need more of that in our life. It's really fun. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of the show. And I'd love to have you back when book 3 hits the streets. Come on back. Let's chat more.
I would love that.
Very good. And all our best to Lynn as well for listening in Thailand. Thank you, Lynn, for being here. Hey, thanks, Amanda, so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for subscribing and following. And you're listening this far in the podcast, so you are my best friend. I'm sorry, but you are now my best friend. So welcome. Nice to meet you. Thank you for being here. LivingTheNextChapter.com has a link on the website to our Facebook group. Are you on Facebook? Probably. You can go there and you can actually interact with our guests. You can talk to them. You can hear more about their journey, about their books. You can speak to them directly. You don't need me. You can come right over to livingthenextchapter.com, click on our Facebook link to our community. You can talk to other listeners of the podcast from around the world who are on Facebook. And, again, speak with our guests. Don't you want to speak to the guests you just heard from? Yeah, you can do that on Living the Next Chapter. Go over there. There's links to our Facebook group, and you're welcome to join. Thanks for listening.
Mindshift Power Podcast, the podcast for teenagers and those who work with them. There's a huge problem in America today. There's a very large disconnect between teenagers and the adults who work with them. I'm looking to bridge that gap with real, raw, honest conversation, not held back by the chains of political correctness. You cannot solve a problem you do not understand. Want to understand teenagers today? Listen to this podcast. This podcast is for teens in the U.S. and Canada. To learn more, go to fatimabay.com/podcast or just look for Mindshift Power Podcast on any listening platform. I look forward to you being a faithful listener.